to digress a minute away from, for maybe 3 minutes, away from bioidentical hormones to give another illustration of the same sort of thing that happened to Dr. Stevenson, who, even though she proved her case scientifically, was let go from the university for that very publication. She proved her case that bioidentical hormones were safe and effective. Now, of course, that was a number of years after they were first prescribed through the pharmacy in Vancouver, BC, in Washington State, but that was when there were still quite a number of women using them, so she could find enough ladies to participate in the experiment. All right, well, another thing very similar to that happened to a Dr. Patil, P-A-T-I-L, who at the time was at a university in North Dakota. What he had done is worked first with experimental animals to prove that it might work, and then he had, with 2 men who were paraplegic, which, for the very few who don't know what that means, paralyzed from the neck down, and one of them had no sensation from the neck down, he gave them injections of something totally natural that all of us had taken a bath in, because when we were inside a mom, the placenta was producing quantities of HCG, and of course, all of us as little gestating fetuses were exposed to a whole lot of HCG. So it's probably safe, right? Yeah, because it sure didn't hurt us when we were inside a mom. Okay, he gave them injections of this. Why did he do it? Because he had studied and learned that when the fetal nervous system starts to develop, the levels of HCG start to go up, and when the fetal nervous system is fully formed, the level of HCG goes back down again. So he said, hey, this stuff must have something to do with development of nerves and nerve pathways. So he gave very large injections of it to these 2 men, and within 3 months they were both up walking with crutches. Now, he got that published in a medical journal, but it's not at all conventional, so the editors of that medical journal took the next 2 pages writing that they did not believe this, even though they published it. And so Dr. Patil then sent them pictures of the same thing he'd done with experimental animals after cutting the spinal cord of the poor experimental animal in half. And a few months later he does a biopsy and there's new nerves growing right across the spinal cord. Anyway, he not only was criticized by the medical journal that published it, he was fired from his job at the University of North Dakota, and I was able to find him, fortunately, and ask him if he'd ever done that work again, and he said no. He had a new job at a different university, and he didn't want to lose his job again. It's very sad that we cannot make progress even with research proven, like this HCG and the guys who are up and walking, research proven natural substances. It's very sad that we can't, because they're just not part of the so-called standard of care. And that goes on with bioidentical hormones. Right now FDA is trying to get rid of them. They're trying, I hope they don't succeed. And that happened to Dr. Patil, and someone actually paid for, I kid you not, a computer search of all the decisions of the Washington State Medical Board. And what they found was that only 5% of conventional standard of care doctors had been penalized within a year or 2 by the state medical board, but in that same length of time, it was 50% of the doctors who do natural medicine, 50% as compared to 5%. So if one wants to do this type of healthcare, one has to tiptoe quite cautiously because of that. Let me tell you about the one of the very first genetic engineering disasters and how that led to some problems. That genetic engineering disaster was unfortunately, or fortunately, done in Japan by a company called Showa. And what they had done is genetically engineered, or re-engineered I should say, some bacteria to make an amino acid in large quantities. That amino acid was called tryptophan, and the reason they wanted that done, it was a less expensive source of tryptophan, and tryptophan was in, even at that time, all the health food stores, because some people had found it helped them with depression, other people with anxiety and nervousness and something, and so on. And after the genetic engineering disaster, actually 82 people died. I think it was 82, but approximately 82 died of taking that Showa stuff, which was sent over to the United States, bottled as tryptophan. They took it and dropped dead. And the people who discovered what was the matter, we were at the Mayo Clinic. And what they discovered is instead of turning out one tryptophan molecule at a time, those little bacteria had turned out two of them stuck together, which is not at all the way bodies use tryptophan. And these bodies of these people could not use it stuck together, and it literally killed them. So FDA put out an edict that said, "Thou shalt not sell tryptophan." So okay, we took it off the shelf, put it away. But then the Mayo Clinic told us what the trouble was, so we sent them a couple of bottles of our tryptophan, and yes, we had to pay for this. Would you please check our tryptophan and see if it is the genetically engineered kind? And back came a letter from the Mayo Clinic. No, yours is not the genetically engineered kind. All right, so it had been used for literally a couple, 3 decades with no problem, because it wasn't genetically engineered like that. Wrong. So we put it back on the shelf and sold it because people found it helped particularly their mental health. All right, so one day when my wife and myself were both out of town, here comes a representative of the state medical board followed by an FDA agent, and they demanded all the tryptophan because they had told us we shouldn't sell it, even though apparently they didn't care. We had a letter of safety from the Mayo Clinic. Okay, so I wasn't there. My wife was CEO of the clinic. She wasn't there. What are the employees going to do? Here's these people. They handed them all the tryptophan. All right, but tryptophan was doing our patients a lot of good. And one of the reasons we're supposed to go to medical school is to do as much good as we can without doing harm. And it's never possible to do 100% of everything that way, but that's what we're supposed to do as much as we can. All right, so we asked the FDA for our tryptophan back. Nope, won't give it to you. Called an attorney, and we sued to get it back. That was in the fall of 1991. And we later learned, because FDA got some grand juries going to try to get after us later, we later learned that FDA had sent undercover agents to our clinic as phony patients to try to get us to do something that they could get us on. Well, apparently that didn't work. So what they then did is an armed raid. No kidding. Guns pointed. And they raided our clinic. And you know what? Our receptionist says she knows why they did that. She says, at that time, you couldn't get an appointment with either me or the other doctor in the clinic. There were only 2 of us at the time, for at least 3 to 6 weeks, depending. And she said, when those guys came in and stuck a gun in my face, I gave them an appointment right away. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, what they did was to charge us with mislabeling and misbranding, because one of the things we had in our IV room was labeled capital B dash capital K-O-M-P-L-A-X, B complex, instead of capital B capital dash C-O-M-P-L-A-X, and that's mislabeling and misbranding. Why did we have it with a K? Because all of the B12 we could find in the United States at that time had either additives or preservatives or something else, and I still to this day work with a lot of environmentally sensitive people, and so we went looking for one that was pure B12, and we found it in Germany, and that's why they spelled it B-C-O-M-P-L-A-X. But that didn't matter, and they found a moldy container of something else in our trash, and those were 2 of the crimes they charged us with, is using contaminated moldy stuff and using mislabeled, misbranded. By the way, it was in the trash because that's where it belonged. So they convened a grand jury, and very fortunately, as you mentioned, someone from Tahoma sent out a lot of messages about the raid, and Alex Schaus, who was in Tahoma at the time, he put together a legal defense fund, and we got contributions from all over the country because we had to have one attorney for each of our 11 employees and co-workers. I had to have one, everybody had to have an attorney, and they did this grand jury thing, and they couldn't get an indictment. So they convened another grand jury. Yeah. Oh, and they couldn't get an indictment there either. So they dropped the whole thing after 2 grand juries, and each of which went on for a year to a year and a half. And we never did get our tryptophan back because I don't know what happened to the lawsuit we filed, but it was overrun by this pointing of guns. And that's the FDA raid on Tahoma Clinic. Now, I suppose they could have another raid because I'm giving this interview, but I wonder what the grounds would be for that. But what it did do is create a lot of attention all around the United States. And partially because of that, when Congress passed, for once, a piece of good legislation called the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, once they passed that, we were able to do more things than we could do before. So I guess it had one good outcome. Folks, FDA is trying to get rid of right now bioidentical hormones. Please go to anh-usa.org and just click on Save My Bioidentical Hormones. You'll get all the information. You can also send an email to your representatives about it. But they are safe. They're molecules which belong in human bodies. And as long as we do not use more than belongs in there, we're not going to do any harm. And that's all about bioidentical hormones, which we are going to continue using for as long as we can, because so many women, and then fewer, but still men, say, when I replace my hormones in this way after my own organs are not making as many of those anymore, wow, do I feel better. Mm-hmm.